The great Ted Lasso urged us to get curious instead of judgmental. But I think curiosity is also a pretty good sub for anger. Welcome back to the 50/50 Project, where every week I talk through an item on a list made up of one thing I've learned for each year I've lived. So this week we remain in the conflict category for a second week in a row. And I'm sure that back to back conflict episodes flanking election day is just pure and total coincidence. Anyway, we're at thing number 32, get curious instead of furious. This is probably going to be super short because I am sick this week and my throat is on fire, but also because it's a simple principle that I think is also somewhat self-evident. Sometimes other people do stuff that is baffling to me. And I have learned that things are just better when, instead of plunging headlong into infuriated outrage about that, I nudge myself to move instead toward genuine curiosity. Why might they be making a choice that seems counterintuitive to me? What's the motivation? What's the rationale? In moments of great and passionate divisions in public life, such as where we sit right now, you'll often hear one group saying about the other, and vice versa. What were they thinking? And the same thing happens in moments of personal or familial or communal disruption. You'll hear someone just muse aloud, what on earth were they thinking? At this stage in what feels like a very, very long life right now, I have finally learned that this is more than an empty turn of phrase. I think it's more than a rhetorical flourish that reframes outrage, or at least it can be. Maybe it should be. That can be an actual question that we pose and explore. And sometimes I find something there that moves me toward understanding, and sometimes I just don't. But the process of asking, really and truly, what were they thinking? It forces me to pause long enough to kind of comb through the catalog of human impulses and human fears and human hopes and human desires to try to get to something approximating an actual answer. What were they thinking becomes what were they hoping for? What were they afraid of? What were they trying to accomplish? And by default, that process forces me to reckon with a confounding, confusing other as a human being within a human framework, even in a moment where I don't really feel like doing that. There are lots of avenues that I could probably go down here. We could talk about epistemological crisis, which is some weird thing that I've studied and never thought it would be at the forefront of American public life, but here we are. We could talk about what happens when we not only don't know, but when we no longer know how to know. I could talk about what happens to us when we're flooded by 50 channels of information and 25 of them are contradicting the other 25. Or what happens to us when we're in a constant state of overwhelming information and continual contrived conflict. But I think right now, all of that just seems like more noise. So, what I want to say today is simpler than that, I guess. And it's just that I think that I fare better and the quality of my own life is greater when I force myself into being curious before I leap headlong into being furious. And sometimes I manage to do that, and sometimes I don't. But when I can, I think the world around me seems more tolerable. The people around me seem less inscrutable, and the state of my own soul feels less troubled. So we could go into more examples of how that has played out in life for me, or how it might someday play out for you, but I don't think that's expressly necessary, especially on a sick day like today. So maybe actually that's enough for today. I hope the rest of our day is heavy on opportunities to be curious and light on provocations to be furious. Thanks for spending some time with me today, and I'll be back next week with thing number 33.